In today's video, I share with you TimeStrike from the Adventure Together Kickstarter. But before we get into today's video, just want to give a quick shout out to all of my lovely Patreon supporters. You guys are so awesome. You make this channel what it is. And Bob the Beholder did make his picks for the October 2023 GGGGs. Each month, Bob the Beholder picks some of my Patreon supporters to receive gratitude gifts. And for this past month, El Gordo 555 and Dwayne A both received the Warlayer Forbidden War Terrain Kickstarter pledges. Jordan M received the printed and painted Forbidden War Terrain. William R and Richard M both received a pledge for the Torch and Shield Kickstarter. Stujen and Phil P both received free memberships for the Beast Miniatures STL files. And then finally, North is receiving $100 to go towards the Gamefold Game Table Kickstarter. Go ahead and use the link below to go to my Patreon page to see what this month's GGGGs are going to be, as we're going to be populating that list as the month goes along. So if you haven't seen my previous video, go ahead and check it out here, where I talk about the tiles that is currently being offered on the Kickstarter. And that was made before the Kickstarter actually started, and I am really impressed with how cheap these tiles are and are available to use with a lot of other games. But here I'm going to be featuring and going through some of the rules so that you can get a better understanding for how TimeStrike actually plays. I'm going to first walk through very quickly some of the base rules, and again, this is the prototype. I did print out the rules that they made available to me, so there might be some changes that are made, but for the most part, I think 90% of what's found in these rules are going to apply, with them possibly tweaking some of them or making some additions in the future. And then I'm going to end out the video just by sharing with you some of my thoughts and review of gameplay. So go ahead and use the timestamps below if you want to skip to any of the relevant sections. But before I go into some of the gameplay rules, I do know that many of you are wondering, how does the game compare to the original Heroscape? And I'm going to say right off the bat that there aren't a ton of similarities between the two games, as TimeStrike is a much more developed and much more complex game with a deeper rule set versus the OG Heroscape game. And I feel the same way that I do about Heroscape that I feel towards HeroQuest, which is a game that I had a ton of nostalgia for, as that was my very first dungeon crawler that I experienced, and sort of started my love for dungeon crawlers as my go-to genre of choice for the board games that I play. But in reality, HeroQuest is too simple, and it's a game that I've never really actually played again. I feel the same way with Heroscape, where the rules are a little bit too simple for me. And for what it is, it's super fun, and as a kid, the rules are super easy to grasp, and there isn't a ton of attempts made to balance out the factions at all. There were sort of key ones that you always wanted to take when you're playing that game. So I feel like TimeStrike is a welcome addition of complexity and strategy that you don't have in the original Heroscape board game. But if you're looking for that simplicity, if you're looking for something that's really similar, I would just say stick to OG Heroscape, because what you're getting in TimeStrike is a legit skirmish board game that has depth to it and strategy and options that is beyond even some of the skirmish games that I am playing currently. So just know, even before watching the rest of this video, that TimeStrike is very different from the original Heroscape game, and I would argue that as a tabletop gamer like myself, it's a welcome addition because you just have a lot more strategy with it. So let's go ahead and dive into the rules so that you get a general overview of the depth that's found there, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts. Alright, so what we've done is we've set up the board, and they do recommend for 2 to 5 players, starting off with at least 8 of these border pieces, so the board is a little bit larger and you have enough space to be able to move around. You want to create the base layer and then just have height variability, as there is height advantage when attacking. And I do have water tiles because you need water in order to go fishing. So once the board is set up, we do place the fear somewhere in the middle of the board. We do place any beasts. Right now we do have one beast on the board. And then typically you do put your factions on the edge of the board, but just for the sake of this gameplay video, I'm going to place them towards the middle so that we can get right into the action right away. We're going to go ahead and check out all of the player dashboards that we have. So we have both Aaron and Mara on one side, and we have filled out all of the cubes as instructed, because as these are removed, that's going to give bonuses or status effects for each of these abilities. And then each of the cards does have special abilities for the various characters. So this is one faction, and typically I think each player will pick 3 heroes, but again, just for this tutorial, just keeping it simple here, picking 2 on each side. And then over here on the other side is Luxuria and Legion. One of the unique things about Legion is that it does have 2 actual units in this player character dashboard. So when it is Legion's turn, you're going to be activating both of them, as they have the stats available to each one of them. So each one can move forward, each one has a attack, and so on and so forth. So that's one of the unique things, is some of the character cards do have more than one unit. But these 3 up here, there's only 1 unit per character. And then we have our other cards up here just available to be able to draw from. And again, like I mentioned, we do have 1 beast, starting off with 1 beast on the board like this. And then you have the cubes that you're going to be using for HP trackers up here. And then you do have the fear cards, the AI activation cards that are here. And again, typically you have this as your first card, and these stats make it so that it's not beneficial to try to attack the first round. You do want to sort of wait, so I'm going to go ahead and pretend we did go through the first round, as this will be more sort of standard of what we're going to face. First turn is determined by a roll-off with the D20. So we're going to have the red team, or Luxuria and Legion, going first, and then you go clockwise with the other team going second. And again, this is typically only in the first round that you do this, as the fear cards will tell you who goes next in the subsequent rounds. Here's a handy dandy player aid. So on the player turn, you can move, and you can split up your move to be able to do actions in between movements, so keep track of that. And then here is a list of all the actions that is available to you, and each one of these actions cost 1 energy. And as you can tell here, most of the characters do have 2 energy available per turn in order to spend on these various actions. So you are able to fish, mine, and trade, and that can only be done when you are unengaged. And then you can climb, sentience, contest, tame monster, cast ability, and then the final action is you can attack. Although if you use the attack action, it does end the unit's turn. So you want to save that to be last. Here are the various statuses that you can have. I won't go through that. But then this card shows you all in more detail each one of the actions that you can perform, which is really handy to have these cards. So for this first activation, I am going to activate Legion, and he has a movement of 4. So I'm going to move him 1, 2, 3, 4. And get within melee distance because he doesn't have any ranged attacks. And I'm going to go ahead and roll for his melee attack, which right now his stat is a measly 1. So all I'm doing is just rolling 1 die, and I did get a sword, which is a hit. The other things on this die is you have a couple of hits, but you also have what are behind this gold background, which is a lucky strike and lucky hit, and various abilities on your cards will tell you what you can do with lucky hits. We also have defenses, so you're rolling the same dice for defense, and you do have 2 shields. 1 is regular and 1 is a lucky defense. Again, that's going to trigger some abilities on your character cards. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at Aaron's card. We see that he does have 3 defense, so we're going to go ahead and grab 3 dice and roll it, and he got no blocks, so he needed to have the defense, so he is going to take 1 point of damage. We just grab a cube here and stick it up here, as he has 6 health. But actually, I forgot to mention that height, you do get an advantage, so if you are higher, even by 1, then you're going to add another die to either your attack damage or your defense roll. So in this case, Aaron does have height advantage over the Legion, so he does get one more die to defend, and he does actually roll 8 defense, so he ends up not taking any damage, so we'll go ahead and remove that. So for the other half of Legion, I'm going to go ahead and use the action Climb Sentience, which again takes 1 energy, and I'm going to use that just to go up the next level here and actually place myself onto the Fear. Now there's a number of advantages for why you want to climb on top of the monsters, but in this case I'm going to go ahead and do that. And for my second action, I'm going to go ahead and attack him. So we're going to go ahead and roll 1 die. Did not get a successful attack. Now I do have height advantage, so anyone who's standing on top of Fear is able to attack it with height advantage. So I'm going to go ahead and roll another die. Got a blank, so that was a 0. Now one of the differences with Fear or any of the monsters is that this card dictates how much defense that it has, and it doesn't actually roll, but this is automatic. So whenever it attacks, it automatically has 2 successes, and then here automatically does have 1 defense. So even if I had successfully hit it once, that 1 defense would have gotten rid of it. So it takes no damage. Overall, the only reason why you're attacking, because you don't keep track of any hit points on Fear, is with a successful landed attack, you are able to draw from the loot deck. So let's pretend we were successful in wounding Fear. I would have drawn this loot card, and basically I set this next to my character dashboard here, and I'm able to use this. And in this case it says when this unit is in combat with another player, use this to steal one of the opponent's die before they roll, and roll it yourself. So this is a one-time use that you can use. And that's the case with a lot of the loot deck. And in fact, when you successfully hit Fear, you actually do draw 2 loot cards, not just 1. So Fear as activated, so we go ahead and put the activated token here just so that we can keep track of who has gone and who hasn't. Alright, so I'm going to go ahead and activate Mara, and for her first action I'm going to spend an energy and go fishing. And you have to be next to a water tile on land tile, and the water tile has to be unoccupied. You also can't be engaged with an enemy, which all of those things are true for Mara right now. So I'm going to go ahead and spend an energy to go fishing, and what you do is you roll a d20, and as long as you are 10 and above, you succeed in fishing. So go ahead and draw a fish card, and here this is a Scape Crab. Discard after use, heal this unit for 2 health, or add a buff to this unit, or remove a curse from this unit. So I'm going to go ahead and apply this right away because it doesn't cost any actions or energy in order to use it. So I will discard this in order to buff one of my abilities here on this unit. So I'll discard right away. Otherwise I would just keep it next to the dashboard. And here you'll see in the blue are all of the available skills and abilities that I can buff up. So I will go ahead and increase my attack so that I get a +1 to the number of attack dice that I roll. Now once I'm done using it, it's sort of one use, I have to put this back and that buff goes away. That is also true for any curses that I receive. They are typically -1, but once it affects me once, I do go ahead and move it away, or like this fish card showed, I would be able to remove a curse from this unit as well. So to finish up Mara's turn, I am going to go ahead and move up here. Use 2 movement to move up. And I am going to shoot at this Legion figure. And the way that range attacks happen is I first have to make sure I have line of sight and range. And so line of sight is determined basically from the model's viewpoint to anywhere along what is visible. So it is true line of sight. So sometimes you have to get behind the model to make sure you have line of sight. Obviously I have clear line of sight here. And the cards show you where you are looking from. So the red dot here is the eye, and that's what you use for figuring out line of sight. And then when you move over to the enemy, anything that is in gray has to be visible, and you have to have a clear line of sight in order to be able to target it. And then my range is determined by this up here, which is 3. So I can shoot figures up to 3 away, which obviously this Legion figure is only 2 away, so plenty within range. So let's go ahead and roll again. She typically rolls 4, but I have a +1 buff right now, so I'm going to be rolling 5 dice. I got 4 successes, 2 of which are lucky, but as you can see here, she doesn't have any abilities that take advantage of luck, except only when she is defending. Legion only has a defense of 2, so let's go ahead and roll his 2 dice. He gets no defenses, so is actually going to take 4, and that is going to entirely defeat Legion, but check out his passive. When Legion is defeated, they can revive adjacent to an ally unit or fort. They return with no buffs or curses at full health. That is once per game. Otherwise, I would have to remove both of these, but by using that, they will be able to revive next to an ally, so I'll go ahead and stick them over here next to Luxuria, and they start off again with 4 hit points. Now's a good time to talk about movement costs. So you notice that when she moved up here, she moved 1 step up here. It only costs 1 movement, and then another movement to go up here. So whenever you're just going up 1 level of difference, it doesn't cost any more movement to go up that level. But anything beyond the first level is going to cost extra movement. So for example, if she was here, you'll notice that this is 2 levels higher. This movement would cost 2 to move up here, and then another 2 to move up here. So this total would be 4 movement points to move up here. Now let's say she was all the way down here and wanted to move up 1, 2, 3, 4 levels in 1 step. That would cost 4 movement. So just count up the number of levels, and basically that's how much it costs to move into that space. In terms of the water tiles, whenever it doesn't cost extra, so it only costs 1 to move into a water tile from land. But whenever you move out of a water tile, it costs 2 movement. So this would be 2 movement here, 2 movement here, and then 2 movement here to get out of the water. Now, if I wanted to include height, it would be 2 movement to get out of water, and additionally 1, 2 to move up this. So this would cost 4 movement to make that step up. Roads, they actually only take 1 point of movement in order to travel anywhere along the road. So it's highly advantageous to build roads so that you can get all the way across the map, or one side or the other. How do you build roads? So as long as you are on land, and as long as you have these resources, which you can spend 1 of your energy in order to grab a resource. And I'm using my lava tiles as resources. I think in the base game there are going to be ore tiles, which I don't have. That's why I'm using these instead. You can grab one of these and just place it on the board as long as you are not engaged. In this case, Luxurious actually wouldn't be able to grab it because she's engaged with the fear. She would have to be over here in order to grab it off of this tile. She has to be unengaged. So you go ahead and place any resources onto your dashboard, and at any time during your turn you can spend it in order to build. And in this case, I'll go ahead and spend this resource to go ahead and grab 3 different road tiles. And since the space I'm in right now is not a road tile, one of them has to be in the space that I'm in, otherwise I don't have to spend it that way. And I can add 2 more away from me. So now I have extended this road, so even if I was down here, I could spend 1 movement point and end up all the way up here. So Luxuria, for her turn, is going to try to capture this beast, and so she's going to go ahead and move down. And normally she might take an opportunity attack, or in this game it's called cheap shot, when she moves away from an enemy. But the Lost, including Fear or these guys, actually don't get a cheap shot. It's only other players that will do that. So let's pretend instead of her moving down here that she was over here engaged with these 2 enemies. And had she moved away from engagement, in other words from melee range, then they each get a cheap shot. And basically what that means is they will roll a die each, and any swords that they get will do a point of damage. So in this case, Luxuria would take 2 points of damage because of these results. But in this case, Luxuria actually has a passive ability that says she ignores all cheap shots. So she can move about freely, not worrying about that. So when you're trying to tame one of the beasts, basically the beast is making an attack roll, and then the unit trying to capture it is making a defense roll. And as long as you get a successful defense and no attacks get through, then you are able to capture the monster. So right now we actually use the fear deck to see what the lost attack value is. So it's going to actually roll 2 dice here. Rolled 2 swords, and so Luxuria has to get 2 blocks. Her defense is typically 3, but because she's on higher ground, she's going to add another die, so she has 4. And she did roll enough defenses. She rolled 3 defenses, so did block, so she effectively captures. Had she not rolled any, let's say that she only rolled 1, then one of the damages would have gone through to Luxuria, and she would not have been successful in taming the beast. But because she was successful, what she does is she grabs this card and places it next to her card so that the next time she activates, she will also be able to activate this Moggy during her turn, which is basically a whole nother unit. So grabbing these beasts is hugely advantageous because in effect you're getting another character for your side. So after everyone has gone and every character has been activated, what you do is you draw the top card of the fear, and then you flip it over and you walk through each one of these AI steps. So in this one, it's tentacle spawn. Fear spawns a tentacle. Determine who controls it. Now, remember that I had Legion on this fear monster. Anyone who is on the highest level of the monster is the one who controls it. But because it was knocked off, control is determined based off of a die roll, a contested die roll. So you roll this die, and right now 18. So this team is going to control all of the actions. So of course they're going to make the actions all determined based off of what harms the other side the most. So the first thing we do is we move fear anywhere on the timescape. Follow the sentience movement instructions. So basically, whenever you move this huge model, you need at least 5 of the 7 hexes that it occupies to be supported. Otherwise, you can destroy the terrain. So let's say we go ahead and move it over here. And as you can see, it isn't flat, but you go ahead and remove any of the characters, and I'm going to go ahead and plop it right on top of them. And it destroys any of the hexes that it lands on, to the point that you need to have 5 valid spaces, valid hexes for it to stand on. Now, in the rules it says you just remove it, but in this case, because I have these combined pieces, it's a total pain to remove this whole thing because you're disrupting all of this terrain. And I have house ruled that the pieces that you destroy, you're allowed to actually set down so that you're creating space for it to actually be on valid hexes. So that's one of the house rules that I have. You guys can decide how you want to house rule it, but that's one of the decisions that we made. So let's go ahead and just pretend that this is a valid space for it to be on. So we've fulfilled the first step. The second step is, after moving fear, place a tentacle at the center of fear's previous position. So we go ahead and grab this, and I think fear was right here, so we stick another tentacle. And then the units within 3 range of fear or fear's tentacles receive a range curse. Sorry, after we place this, we go ahead and stick these guys right next to fear in these spots, and they have a choice as to where they want to be. In fact, this is actually going to harm my guys as well because they're within 3 of the tentacles as well as fear itself. So everyone is going to be affected by this. And a range curse really is only going to affect Mara, because she's really the only ranged character. So we're going to remove this, and she's going to have a -1 to her range to effectively make it 2. Again, once that actually kicks in, we will cover up and the curse will go away. And then finally, the AI is noting that a unit cannot be cursed more than once. So we're pretty much finished with this. So there is a variety of AI things that happen. So it's random how it moves. And one of the cool features about this game is even if one side is completely knocked out, that side becomes the myth character, and from that point on, they're really controlling the AI of all of these cards. So even though they still have to follow the AI instructions, they determine placement and who is primarily going to be attacked, which I think is cool because even if you're knocked out, you are able to still be engaged in the game. So that's really, really awesome. We didn't go over quest cards because each side is able to draw a quest card. It just gives you different goals or objectives that you can have with rewards. We also didn't talk about the jump attack. So in this case, when you jump from a higher height to melee attack someone that is down lower, you get a +1 advantage to it. Also, not only can you build roads, but you can also build walls, and walls block line of sight and movement as well. And you can activate a whole host of abilities that's on your cards. So for example, Mara has a AoE attack, which hits any enemies that are around her. So there you have it. Hopefully that gives you a general sense of how the game plays. And I do want to encourage you to go check out this video where you actually do see the game being played by the designers, by Adventure Together, so that their rules are going to be more accurate than what I displayed. And I'm sure I'm going to make some mistakes. And so just check out the comments below because I'm going to pin some of the rules that I got wrong. And that's the reason why I didn't include a gameplay video, is because I think that does a good job of addressing people's questions as well as giving you a general sense and flow of this game. So what do I think? My evaluation of the rule set and of TimeStrike overall is that it is providing actually a surprising amount of depth and detail and crunch to a rule set that is really well thought out. And I am surprised that even though this is a prototype rulebook, it does address some edge case scenarios really well. So in terms of having a fully fledged rule set that they have been working on, and I'm confident that they're going to continue to tweak on it as the campaign closes and before delivery, I think you especially if you're a wargamer, you can be confident that this is a good rule set. Now, I will say though, I'm wondering about how much this is going to apply to sort of non-tabletop skirmish wargamers. So if you're not that, if you're not really used to having some crunch in terms of the rules and options, this might be a little bit overwhelming for you. Let me just give you one example. So in terms of line of sight, there's a lot of games, hex-based games, where line of sight is simplified to any corner of the hex. As long as you can draw a straight line to any corner of the target hex, you have free line of sight. And a lot of games actually say you can ignore other figures blocking line of sight. But this is a game where you're actually doing true line of sight, which is typically something reserved for more complex games, more complex war games that have rule crunch to it. And so there's a certain level of complexity that TimeStrike has that might not appeal to someone who's looking for more of a beer and pretzels game. So the place where I would put the rule set compared to some other tabletop skirmishers is sort of more complex than one-page rules, but less complex than Warhammer. The category that I would put it in is along the lines of my favorite sci-fi skirmish game, which is Dead Zone from Mantic. It's sort of within that arena of complexity. Now, maybe a little bit less because in this game, you're not doing army building, which is a big part of Dead Zone. And if you don't like army building, don't worry, you don't really do army building. You are drafting your team members, but you're not really tweaking each one of the characters or adding things to them. The only thing that tweaks them is the loot, the fish, all that kinds of stuff, but that's universally available across your team. So it is a step down from a rule set like Dead Zone, but I am saying that if you're just looking for a game that you can just jump on and not worry about, it's simple. You have 2 actions, you move and then you shoot. this isn't it. There's a lot more that you can do, like crafting, building stuff. You're able to fish, which is an awesome mechanic in my book. The complexity of you have a common enemy that's on the board that you're trying to manipulate and use to wear down the other side, but it's possible that both of you might lose and that the Fury might win. So there's a lot that's going on here, and the fact that you can destroy parts of the terrain and build it up, all of that adds to a level of complexity that is beyond sort of what I would say is your beer and pretzels game. Now, you can clearly choose not to use rules. So for example, if you feel like line of sight is too complicated, or if you feel like the height difference is too complicated, you can clearly choose not to use those rules and make it as simple as you want. In some ways, this rule set is giving you all of not only the basic rules, but any possible rules that might be added with future expansions. It's actually being already included here. So this is sort of maximum amount of complexity, and you can take that and minimize some of that by house ruling like I do with sort of the land being destroyed by the Fury or multi-hex units. And you can make the game sort of what you want it to be. So overall, for me, the level of depth that's found in this rule set obviously isn't intimidating. I actually like that. I definitely will be playing this game. I don't know if I will ever go back to playing Heroscape just because it's too simple for me right now. But again, it's the type of thing, if you still have all your Heroscape miniatures, you can still play that rule set and play with those miniatures on this terrain. And as sort of a seasoned tabletop wargamer, I do like the addition of having sort of a common enemy. That's not a feature that's found in most tabletop skirmish games. And the ability that if you get knocked out, then you take control of all of these lost figures. I think that's an awesome mechanic and keeps you sort of in the game. So a lot of kudos to whoever designed and made TimeStrike. It's a lot more deep than I thought it was. And my hope is that more and more characters, playable characters, are unlocked. And it looks like that's the case, that some of the stretch goals might be additional heroes are going to be unlocked, as well as more of the lost beasts. So that's my overall judgment. I think this is not so simple that seasoned wargamers like me wouldn't really enjoy it, and I do, but it isn't so complex that your non-tabletop wargamer wouldn't know how to get into it. Please hit the like button and subscribe, as I do have a lot of other videos regarding 3D printing for games, as well as reviews just like this one and playthroughs. And again, go to my Patreon page to check out what this month's gratitude gifts are going to be. Otherwise, happy gaming. We'll see you next time.